we spend about 45 minutes to an hour with Nightingales. Every night a different musician joins me. It's telling their story of extinction, because they'll be extinct in my lifetime here. And that's an extraordinary concept. This is palliative care. What we're doing is saying thank you to these birds for the thousands of years that they've sung for us and taught us how to be humans. We're now singing them away.
Welcome to The Slowdown, your time to define success and growth on your own terms with a little inspiration from others. I was joined today for my final episode of season 2 by an incredibly special human. I heard Sam before I saw him in the great hall of a castle somewhere in Poland where I went for an experience design course. His incredible voice filled the room and sent chills through my whole body. Sam Lee is a musician, a collector of folklore and a conservationist, renowned for his rich baritone voice and a commitment to preserving traditional songs. Sam's work bridges the gap between ancient folklore traditions and contemporary audiences, fostering a deeper appreciation for cultural heritage and environmental stewardship. For me, Sam is a reminder of the importance of great stories to slow us down, make us present in the moment, and appreciate the natural world around us. So much so that we are moved into action. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi, Sam.
Hello.
I'm so glad you could join me for what is the final episode of my recording of season 2.
I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for having me. What an exit for a season.
Every moment that I get to spend time with you is always such a delight.
This is not the first time we've met.
It's not the first time.
It's the smallest space that we've ever met in, though, I think.
Yes, we're normally in the great outdoors.
Yeah, or a castle.
Or a castle.
Yeah.
We'll make do. You are a Mercury Prize-nominated musician, currently on album 4, a storyteller, song collector, and conservationist whose work bridges folk traditions with contemporary soundscapes. You're also the founder of Nest Collective, an organization dedicated to revitalizing folk music and connecting people to nature through cultural experiences. You explore how music can be a form of slowing down, deep listening, and reconnecting with the rhythms of life. In 2021, you released a debut novel, The Nightingale, Notes on a Songbird, telling the epic tale of the highly endangered bird and their place in culture, folklore, music, and literature. You're also regular on radio and TV. You've composed soundtracks for several films and supported a number of nonprofits. Most people I speak to, I'm hearing them tell a story of following a masculine path of success that had been laid out for them by capitalist culture, which leads them to a burnout and a reckoning and a decision to dramatically change their lives. But I feel like you kind of are Mr. Slowdown. So it's my duty to really pull out the wisdom and the tools from you. Like, I want to learn. I'm also so impressed by your work.
Thank you. Wow, that was almost awkward listening to that. And I love how it looks on the outside. On the inside, I'm not the kind of calmness. I'm totally ADHD. My brain is racing. My work is my therapy. So the more I do of it, the more I pack in each day of whatever it is I do, the slower I am. So I do it for myself because I'd probably fall apart if I didn't.
Well, I'd like to start from the start. Where were you raised and by whom? And what was your childhood like?
Well, I am a Londoner, born and raised Kentish town, other side of the river from where we are. Inner city kid, raised by my 2 parents who are still around and are still raising me.
In so many ways.
And I'm a product of several communities and places. We all are. We're all, come out in response to our place of birth and experience. And London has had a very, very big impact on me. I'm a devoted Londoner, but I love London because it's shaped the appreciation for nature as well. It's provided a lot of places of green and exploration and curiosity within that passion of mine, but it's also a cultural nexus. And so I've been raised by the multiple worlds and cultures that have existed here and found sanctuary in London. So mum, dad, London, those are my 3 parents.
And how did you get access to some nature?
Hampstead Heath, the back of my garden, which is a little, tiny little thing in North London, being sent off as a kid on these charity summer camps, which I'm still very involved with, forest school camps. Just getting on my bicycle and going and finding places and friends that were also really into it, and some great mentors and teachers who, as I got older, spotted that I had a great affinity with nature. It was a place of sanctuary for me. And I just found my way. My parents were very good at just kind of, it was the 80s, they're like, yeah, go off for the day and, you're only 9, but you'll be fine. And so I did lots of sort of just being in my own space, in my own way, discovering and learning, climbing trees, eating wild things.
And when did you first start to realize what you might want to do in the world, be in the world?
I'm still trying to work that out. It's an ever question that I've done many things. I've been lucky to have been a jack of all trades and tried out my hand at so many things. I went to art school, which teaches you entrepreneurialism, opportunity finding, ingenuity. I was a dancer. I was a photographer. I was a Japanese lacquerer. I'm like kind of jokingly done so many different crazy things. I wasn't a musician until kind of my mid-late 20s. Didn't release my first album until I was 32. So that came much later, but allowed me the opportunity to explore where my wanting to make a comment on the world around me could be expressed best.
And at what point did folklore and folk song enter your orbit?
Yes, quite young. So I was singing folk songs unknowingly around the campfire in the summer with this organisation. Didn't know they were folk songs, but I just knew that they weren't songs that you would hear anywhere else outside of those fireside circles. It wasn't until my 20s that I discovered that these were songs that had some sort of ancient lineage. I'd studied anthropology. I was very interested in indigenous cultures, and subsistence and relationship to nature within many different tribal communities from around the world. And they all had music, and music was part of their devotional practice. And then suddenly there was this moment where I was like, oh my God, Britain has its own indigenous, devotional, secular / sacred song, which is part of our ancestry. These songs serve exactly the same purpose. And so when I discovered this, it was a falling down the well of that music, that more than just the music, the culture, the customs, the whole ideas of what identity means and lineage and ethnicity, sovereignty, all these kind of complex terms that one doesn't think that, we have, but actually Britain is abundant in phenomenal different regional variations and legacies of old ways and old orders that have been passed down through the generations. And the thing that attracted me to them were a lot of them about marking the calendar, seasonal change, kind of ancient atavistic ceremonies, May Day, the equinoxes, the solstices, all sorts of other very curious points that have once held great significance for our ancestors for one reason or another. And ultimately, it's all down to nature. It's all about, the cycles of life, because once upon a time we depended very much in a very subsistent-like way on nature providing. So we had to sing and dance and praise in service to that. I was fascinated by this and see it now as highly relevant, because even though we've outsourced, we are still utterly dependent 3 times a day on nature to keep us alive.
And this is oral history and something that is quite difficult to pin down and catalogue and chronicle, and you felt called to kind of starting to catalogue some of this. Did that feel like a huge task? Yeah.
Well, I didn't know what the task was until I started. I think what came about was that I fell in love with these songs. I was listening to these old recordings of farmers and seafarers and, old housewives in their 80s.
And where were you listening? Where was this available?
On headphones, in the archive, in the English Folk Dance and Song Society up in Camden, Cecil Sharp House, in that library there. I found this place. It wasn't far from where I grew up, very conveniently, and went and volunteered there and started doing jobs and getting paid to be in there and do projects. And I love these recordings, and I was obsessed with them because they were so real and authentic. They weren't professional singers singing for money or fame or celebrity. They were people singing for their life about music that their grandparents and great-grandparents had sung, and a whole different concept of how music, what the role of music is in this instance. But they were all dead. They'd all gone. They'd all been recorded and long died. And I was like, who are these people? Where are these roots that we have? It can't all have finished. And all the academics and the librarians and the folklorists were like, no, those days are gone. Those old singers, they've long passed. We've lost our connection to the oral culture. And I was like, damn it, not true. They've got to be. And I was 5. And then, of course, I had my first connection with one of these elders who was still alive from the Scottish traveller community, Standley Robertson, who took me on as his apprentice and inducted me into the ancient arts of singing from the balladic repertoire from an ancient, thousands of year old tradition. It's kind of a shamanic teaching in that sense.
How did you find him or him find you? Did you seek him out, or was...
I knew of him. I'd learnt some of his songs from recordings thinking he was dead. And then I went to a folk festival in Whitby, Yorkshire.
And he was there.
And he was there singing, and I was like, holy crap. That's
He
Standley
lives.
Robertson. He lives. And his lineage is one of the most revered of the British, singing traditions and storytelling traditions. His family were really the greatest singers ever recorded in this country in that repertoire. So it was like, wow. And he knew who I was. We'd never met. I wasn't having any reputation, but he was the traveller's deeply psychic, knew my name, knew where I was meant to be going, knew my entire life's journey, told it to me instantly, handed me a cassette saying, I've been waiting for you. Here's some songs, learn them. And I was like, how do you know my name and who I am? He goes, I've been waiting for you. And there began an extraordinary kind of slightly Tolkien-esque apprenticeship. I still wear his ring, the ballad ring.
Wow.
And I carry that responsibility of being, as the ring is called, the keeper of the law of the Robertson balladic and tradition, and that spirit, more importantly, not just the songs, but the responsibility, the quality of which you hold and respect the songs. That was for me the greatest teaching. I then went off and searching for other singers and met hundreds of Irish travellers and English gypsies and recorded many, many people with extraordinary songs, some of which prolific repertoires, all of whom have passed on now pretty much. But Standley was always the great teacher, because he was the person with the I think the deepest sort of soul and understanding of the almost supernatural power of these songs.
Well, I mean, the pessimist in me is like, does he have a cassette every day for every kid, and he hopes that one of them might...
He did teach a lot of people. When he was discovered, they realised that it was like finding a sort of, an old medicine man in the forest who still had all the powers, the spells. And very quickly he was brought in as an old man into the Aberdeen University and became a teacher and professor. And he taught history, culture, talked about the traveller culture, the traveller language, their very, very ancient pre-Celtic community. But he'd never had an apprentice. He'd never had a kind of next of kin, as it were. He had children, but they weren't going to go and be singers. So he saw me as somebody who could be the sort of next generation to carry his material and his memory.
Wow. And then what did you do with all of this song?
Well, firstly, he had to die, because that's always part of the journey with these things.
Yeah, it wouldn't be Tolkien if...
No, we lost him in 2009, and that was a great shock. I had 4 and a bit years, with him, and then I realised, okay, it's my turn to step into that place of, what do I do with these songs? I can sing them. I'm beginning to understand what it means to be a singer. Record an album. So I needed him to not be there in a way, maybe, before I could actually make my first artistic statement with these songs. So I made an album, my first album, which came out in 2012, called Ground of Its Own, with some songs of his on. And it got nominated for the Mercury, which meant that very quickly, I was thrust from kind of nobody, having done, a handful of gigs myself, not really even having a proper band, to suddenly on the main stage going, okay, I'm in the fast lane. And but I was ready for it because I like the fast lane.
Well, the music industry is an interesting one, right? Like, how were you able to manage that relationship of the industry wanting you probably to release another album immediately afterwards and so on, and your own kind of personality and wishes and other aspirations and goals? Because, as you said, jack of all trades, you have so many other kind of wide. I feel like music is like one of the mediums that you use and one of the vehicles that you use for a wider message. It's not the only way that you choose to communicate.
Indeed. Well, the hardest thing for an artist is often finding opportunities to be creative. That's it, like I could have spent a life just sort of writing emails, people going, will you book me for a gig? And can I come play at this pub or this back room here? And actually the great gift was that suddenly I had to be an artist. I had to sing. I had to go and do lots of gigs. I had to create a band, understand what being a live performer is, being a teller of story, how one communicates the unique thing that I'd gathered with these songs and experiences. How does one retell that on the live stage and arrange songs to capture the identity of these songs, their lineage, and respect the singers and the journeys that the songs have been on before they came to me. And then at the same time, put on a good show. And, that was an amazing gift and training. And I traveled the world and then, had to go and record new songs. And for me, the songs are always unaccompanied. That's the important thing. Just one singer, one song, no instrumentation at all. But I was very keen that the sonic packaging, the sonic arrangement of these songs was not looking into what English folk sounds like, twiddly-dee, violins and guitars, but actually how could it be a more worldly, incorporating textural concepts and improvised ideas from many different cultures and traditions, root the songs in a new identity and a contemporary sound that might be, and that's, that was appreciated because folk music hadn't really very often been challenged in that way. It always sounded exactly the way it used to sound. So my calling was to go and be creative, and that's brilliant, but that takes its own handling of how does one balance all these things that one wants to do and express, and how to take folk music and build it higher and higher, and have more people appreciate it and connect with this, as I called it, the music that dare not speak its name.
And how did the Nest Collective enter the frame?
So the day we're recording this is the day after the 20th anniversary of when it started. So it started
Congratulations.
20 years ago. And me and the co-founder went for dinner last night, Joe, who runs a wonderful festival called Fire in the Mountain, which has been very successful. We just started putting music on in the top of a pub in Islington, and it became very popular, and suddenly we're doing it more and more. And the Magpie's Nest, that then became the Nest Collective, went on its journey. As of this month, I've actually stepped down from that organisation of 20 years, and I've let go, and I'm moving on to focus on both my own music and my environmental work. But that was just about creating a space for music that both borrowed from the old folk club traditions, which was a huge thing in the 1950s and 60s and started to wane in the 70s till it went almost kind of, underground, borrowing some of that intimacy and that musical sharing with, contemporary live promotings. And I wanted to take them out, concerts outside, around the fire, be in extraordinary, unusual places. So the journey was always about trying to find the weirdest, most wonderful locations to have concerts in instead of going into your presumed venues. So they were immersive, but they were also about what the quality of listening, how important that is. Always the spaces that I made were places where people didn't talk over the music. They sat, and the artists and the audience were in conversation. There was none of the fourth wall, this kind of separation. For me, it was always about breaking that, bringing everyone together. And I think that's so important, and it's now so much more common. And, immersive theatre experiences are always doing that, the integration of the art into the human space and the audience into the performing space. I really love that.
So I actually don't have a sponsor and there aren't any commercial breaks in this season. Instead, I wanted to use this little pause to say how much we would love to hear from you. We want to get to know our audience better. There are lots of different ways to practice slowing down and lots of different people and stories we can hear from. So please leave a comment or a review on this episode to share your thoughts. Tools you use to slow down, someone you'd like to suggest for the show, or just your thoughts on the episode. This really helps us plan future episodes and cover things that you might be interested in. Now, back to the show.
I feel like there is a natural progression from all of this to the experience that I shared with you last year. So I joined somewhere near Hastings a event that you hosted called Singing with Nightingales, where it's a immersive sensory story, song experience in nature. How did the idea for that come about and the kind of design story for that come about? Because it's such a kind of masterclass in you don't need much money to create an incredibly immersive experience that not just is enjoyable and fascinating and interesting and you learn something new, but moves people into action. And that's what you obviously want from conservation and environmentalism.
Yeah. Wow, so lots of questions there. And the way I'll answer it is that what I have created over 10 years, this is our 10th year, I'm just about to go back into the woods in a couple of weeks, is a coming together of everything I've shared about creating a space for music and deeper listening, my passion for nature, growing up with nature connection as part of my practice, and how do I, as a teacher, create experiences and workshops, ideas and practices and techniques for sensory awareness, opening deeper listening, deeper feeling, deeper opening of peripheral vision and peripheral hearing, and the other senses, the beyond the immediate five senses. How do you bring all these principles and ideas into an evening's immersion? And it came about because as a lover of nature and the night and the dark, I'd been introduced to nightingales. I'd learnt about this extraordinary bird. I'd been listening to them for some years. They sing at night from after dusk through the night into dawn. Very unusual, very prolific bird, very enmeshed within ancient culture, folklore, mythology, poetry. They've been the muse for artists for millennia, literally thousands of years. I was captivated by them, but didn't know that when one went up to one, and when I go up to one, I mean like really close, when they're singing their courtship song at night and you sing with them, they sing back. They accept you and they're aware of you, and they will adapt their song in accordance with you and come into key and do all sorts of extraordinary things. And it happened to me when I was making a documentary for Radio 4 for the BBC about nightingales. While doing this, singing with the birds that I'd never done, never thought to even get close to them. Didn't realize you can literally be like 10 feet away and they will just sit there in their bush singing away. They're so desperate for sex. Nothing will scare them off. And me and the musicians were just like, what's going on? And it was a kind of, Damascene moment. It was like, my God, this is the theatre right here. We can't bring these birds into the auditorium. Let's make the auditorium here. So the next year I, proposed it to Brighton Festival, in fact, a wonderful commissioning festival for the arts, do a lot of immersive work. And they were like, love it, let's do this. Don't know what it is, let's try it out. And I did a kind of prototype with them. It sold out in 20 minutes, all the tickets.
Wow.
And then I was like, can I carry on with it and do it next year? And they were like, sure. And so next year there was cooking dinner for everyone every night, 25 people came. And now it's grown into 1,500 people a year, 40 people a night.
And there's a specific window.
Yeah, just mid-April to end of May. That's when they sing, the males sing. After that, they've mated or they've
had enough.
Yeah. They've lost their chances. So we're in that window. We go and do this. And we spend about 45 minutes to an hour with the birds. Every night a different musician joins me. It's all leading up to this moment where we sit in their company in the dark, in complete silence with this prolific improviser, singer. But it's telling their story of extinction because they are declining rapidly. They're red list endangered in this country. They'll be extinct in my lifetime here. We will be the last generation to have heard this bird in England. And that's an extraordinary concept. And I think something that we aren't conceiving yet in our understanding of what the ecological crisis really means, what it feels like, what it sounds like, what that poverty of natural resilience and abundance that is disappearing fast. And they are the kind of, I would say, the canary in the coal mine. So it's telling that story so that when we go and visit the bird, we've fallen in love with them because we've realised how incredible they are, because like we've sang the songs, we've told their story around the fire. And then it's the kind of, well, actually this is palliative care. What we're doing is saying thank you to these birds for the thousands of years that they've sung for us and taught us how to be humans. We're now singing them away. And that's a story that is not easy to swallow, but at the same time, it's exceptionally beautiful. So for me, it's part of the wider campaign of how can we bring about greater ecological understanding, justice, and appreciation for our natural world.
What are your hopes for these projects? Like, what do you hope people go away and do?
Well, my hope is for the deepest impact possible. I'm not going in for light entertainment here. This is transformation work, as all art should be in some way or another. It's many things, and it's many things for many people, and I don't often want to dictate what should be received or people should expect. Some people, it's just wonderful and joyful. So others, it's funny and weird and quirky. Others, it's deeply painful. As grief comes up for a lot of people, there can be massive tears. I get essays sent to me the day after from people saying, you know, this has changed my life. It responds so wildly differently because that's the beauty of humans. What it has at its heart is about trying to be a place of change making. So there is a whole aftercare thing and things at the night that I offer about ways that we can adapt in our own day-to-day lives to be more ecologically, positively impactful. Simple things, I won't share them all now, but you know, they're gestures that we can to make ourselves healthier, happier, more connected, more nature aware, more community based. It's a community event. We sit there in circles and strangers meet each other and go through this journey together. So it's very open-ended. At the same time, it has very clear intentions, and we're just at the moment about to launch our 10-year forward vision of what this work does, how this can be an opportunity for a shift, a societal shift.
And how do you choose your projects? Because I would imagine that people come to have this experience, you must get pulled in 100 different directions. People must say, oh, Sam, we want you to do this. Or there's so many animals in need and so much of nature that requires support. And I imagine you get requests left, right and centre.
I do and I don't. The beautiful thing is I'm not an ecologist, although I have a passion for nature, and I'm a bit boringly scientific about it sometimes and fascinated by, the knowledge. I'm an artist at heart, and an artist is to find myself in places where the creative opportunity or potential reveals itself. You can't just go up to any old bird and do this.
It's specific to the Nightingale thing.
It is. They have presented their opportunity, and I've built this around them. And there are other species that I do work with and have worked with, the turtle dove, the one of the rarest birds in this country, salmon, also a keystone species about to go extinct.
Not big singers, salmon.
No, but story carriers and liminal wisdom keepers, and phenomenal species that defies so many things, that they live for their life in the ocean 5-6 years and then swim up back into the river from which they came, having gone out into the Atlantic and beyond, come back to the very river which they were born in. So it's telling their stories about us realising that a salmon isn't just something you have with cream cheese. It's a phenomenal species that is going extinct because of our torturing of the land. And, how do we start to think about what the consequences of our actions, basically. But also, how do we start to bring music and creativity back into the natural world and also back into ourselves? So it's not just me, the professional, doing it, but everyone is able to participate. And I think when we start being offered that both permission and empowerment, people start to realize that, oh, I'm in love with this. And also, I want to protect this, because you can't protect what you don't love.
I think that was, one of the biggest takeaways that I had from the experience that I had with you, which was I just did not know enough about the Nightingale, and having it be sort of taught and shared in such a beautiful and memorable way. I think about it regularly, that experience. Well, thank you for hosting it. I mean, wow, what a gift.
Yeah. It's very lovely to hear that, and I appreciate you sharing. I also want to stress that the Nightingale is like, it's the bait, but it's the kind of like, it's not really about the Nightingale. Although they're the star of the show, we're all like, your top billing Nightingale.
It's an entryway. It's a gateway into
exactly
everything from before you eat a meal. Slow down, think about what you're eating, be grateful for what you're eating, think about where it comes from. I think I see so many people who just consume at such a fast pace without any consideration for where things come from, how things are made, like any of that stuff. So there's, it's a gateway into a much, much wider conversation. With all these like wonderful things that you do, and with being an artist, obviously taking up a certain amount of headspace, do you have any tools, tips or tricks to slow down in your micro, in your day-to-day?
Well, it's really funny, that one, because everyone finds their own tools, and what works for me might not work for you. I love being outside. I love listening to, like, this morning, the birds have just been singing so strongly, sitting on my doorstep in the sunshine. It was just phenomenal. I love swimming. Lots of, those are some of my little routines. But actually, for me, singing. I just, it sounds obvious I'm a singer. It's not like, but just like collectively as well, singing with other people. That's my prayer. That's my gesture of like rerouting, rewiring. Once I've been singing, I'm just always like so grounded and centered and buzzing. I come off stage when I've done a gig, and some people like really kind of like the adrenaline. I'm like zenned out.
Wow.
I can literally walk off stage, go straight to bed and fall asleep. It's really funny how that settles and aligns, and yeah.
But you mentioned these ballads and your kind of mentor and the folk song that you found. Is there one that remains, perhaps it was one of his, as a real song that you return to? And would you mind singing?
I'll sing a little bit, actually. I'll sing a little bit of one that's not his oldest. It's not his most complex narrative. But it's a love song for the land. And it was Stanley learnt it from his aunt, Muggy Stewart, who was an old traveller who never wore a pair of shoes in her entire life and had hair down to her ankles. She lived, in the wind, and I've heard her voice, though I never met her. And the song is called Morlock Maggie, and it's a kind of devotional song both to the land, to this woman Maggie, but also perhaps the land embodied in her. I'll just sing a couple of verses. It's a very ethereal tune. So yeah, this is Morlock Maggie. And do you see, love, yon flock of sheep? 100 must I own, but 2 or 3, and I'll grant them all to my Morlock Maggie, if she consents for to gang with me. to give concerned love I dare not give, to herd your sheep high on yon heathery hill. And I'll grant them all to my Morlog Maggie, if she consents for to gang with me.
Thank you so much.
That's just one verse.
I've heard you sing in some interesting environments. The first time was in a castle in Poland. I heard you before I saw you or met you, which was interesting, and I was just mesmerized. And it's not something that's so common in our society to, as you say, just hear someone sing. No accompaniments, no other instrument, no piano backing, guitar, just to stand and sing. I would think that requires such a confidence. Did you develop this confidence, or is that not how you see it?
I don't see it like that, because the tradition from which I've come and where my kind of apprenticeship and training was, that's how it was done. And very quickly I realised there was an extraordinary beauty and rarity in that, as you say. It allowed for such deeper listening, for such attunement and channeling to hear a singer sing like that. And these songs actually, it's like seeing an animal in its wild habitat. When you see it in a, dressed up in, doggy outfit in a dog cage, you're like, that's not really how that animal should be. What have we done to it? I feel like that with the songs, a little bit bad analogy, but yeah.
I get what you mean.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the place for folk song in our modern world?
Everywhere. They're songs that speak about every part of our lives. They tell the stories that we are going to encounter once again, of what grief and tragedy and torture and
the same
loss.
Problems
that
we've always had, we will continue to have.
Just on a slightly different scale. So my hope for folk music is that it perseveres, that it evolves, that it finds nourishment and nutrition in the times ahead of us, and could be part of the guidance that we need, because where are we really getting our our compasses, our moral compasses tuned up from these days? So that's what they're there for. They're about holding us to ourselves to account.
I love that. And you're also very knowledgeable about birdsong. When did you actually learn as a kid from Camden
I
about all of these birds? Yeah. And exactly, we did that walk together and it was like, oh, that's that bird and that's that bird.
You just get used to it. Like, you walk down the high street and you see brands and logos and you're like, oh, that's the, and that it's the same. Our brains are made to read and identify. That's how we have become the, brilliant beings that we are, to inventorize and identify. I just know what bird it is. There's so much more depth. I know people who can listen and go, I know what bird that is, and I know exactly what he or she is saying and what's going on around them and what other birds are saying to that bird through what they're saying. There is a language, a very, very, very big language out there. I'm just skimming the surface.
But to learn and attune to something like that, you have to spend a considerable amount of time in nature. How do you split your time currently between your London home and being in nature and learning all of these things?
Yeah, it's not a perfect balance. I do what I can, get out when I can. Luckily, the Nightingales puts me for 8 weeks living in the woods.
Yeah, so that helps.
Yeah. So I get a very intense dose at the beginning of the season. And after that, I'm like buzzing. So that kind of sees me through. And the summers, musicians are at festivals. I do a lot of outdoor work. I do wilderness guiding. I take people on expeditions to Romania and northern Spain and places. So I've made it part of my career and opportunity, because that allows me to get and be out in these places too.
Well, my final question which I ask everybody, and I feel like you might have an interesting answer, is if I had to watch one film or read one book or see one piece of art that would help me better understand you, provide some more context to you, what would it be?
It's a lovely question, that. I'm thinking of films right now. I tell you what I'm going to answer. This is a very random one, because very inspiring for me when I was studying anthropology, and good luck trying to find them, but the anthropological films that were made by the Canadian Film Board in the 1970s, 1974, by a filmmaker called Isan Balixi, and he followed the northern polar indigenous communities on their year-round life cycle of hunter-gathering. And it was the year before they were forcibly settled into homes and taken off the land. And it was this incredible and extensive documentation of their life. And for me, it was this beautiful illustration of a tough but also expressive and deeply quiet and attuned listening to nature, hunting, killing it, eating it, but always with such respect. So yeah, those films by Isan Balixi, and they are filmed in colour, which is extraordinary. Big project, beautiful work.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you for having me. It's
Thank you
been
for your
lovely
time
being here.
and for your song.
Thanks for asking.
Thank you for tuning in. This episode was hosted and created by me, Tiana Tambridge. It was produced by Whitney Rosenthal. Sound and video recording, mixing, editing, and mastering is by Brazen Studios. Cover art designed by Natalia Ruche. Please subscribe to The Slowdown to be notified of upcoming episodes, tell a friend, and leave a review, because it really helps a new podcast like this get out there into the world. And remember, we're all heading to the same destination, and there is no prize for getting there early, so we might as well slow down.